With the most recent 8.0 update for Dead by Daylight, behavior has nerfed 4 of the most commonly used and 3 of the best gen defense perks in the game. Scorch Hook Pain Resonance nerfed again from 25% down to 20% regression, Pop nerfed again from 30% of current progression down to 20% of current progression, Deadlock nerfed from 30 seconds down to 25 seconds, and Grim Embrace is losing about 8 seconds of total gen block time. Now, unlike previous gen defense nerfs, there's no new obvious meta waiting around the corner. Behavior really pulled a red wedding here and have effectively destroyed the core gen defense meta. Now, I'm not gonna just throw that out there. I want to explain why the mainstream gen defense meta is going to die. Also, why this is different from previous gen defense nerfs, what the outcome of nerfing these gen defense perks is going to be, and what I believe the new meta will look like going forward. Spoiler alert, you've seen it before. So first, let's start with why this is different from previous gen defense nerfs. Originally, we had OG Hex Ruin as the entire gen defense meta. Now, I would rate this meta as moderately healthy. There's 2 things I liked about it. One is that it set the pacing of a match. If Hex Ruin stayed up, you knew you could go for more chases without needing to rely on more lethal tactics. But if it got cleansed early, then you knew, okay, I need to get somebody dead pretty quick. It also allowed for a lot of build creativity because it was just 1 perk, giving you 3 perks to synergize with your killer. However, it was not good for new players, understandably, and that is why behavior ultimately decided to nerf it. After OG Hex Ruin, we got Ruin 2.0 and Undying. Now, this meta was not very healthy because it was very RNG based, sometimes requiring the survivors to cleanse all 5 totems in order to get rid of Ruin, which quite literally decided the fate of a match. And that alone made this meta very unhealthy, and it's why it didn't really last that long. Then we got what I believe is the healthiest meta that Dead by Daylight has ever had, Ruin 2.0 and Pop. What was great about this meta is that these perks didn't synergize and stack with each other. Hex Ruin worked independently of Pop. So in a lot of ways, Hex Ruin worked how it used to in being your early game slowdown, and Pop was your backup for once Ruin got destroyed. Both of these perks required you to go out and actually pressure gens, and I think it was just a really overall healthy meta for the game. However, both of these perks ended up getting nerfed, so then we moved on to the Pain Res and Dead Man Switch meta. Now, this meta was moderately healthy. What was healthy about it is also what made it unhealthy, because you could use this meta for good or evil. Maybe evil's a bit too strong of a word, but you get what I mean. If you wanted to go out and try to do a 12 hook game, these perks were incredibly helpful in allowing you to do that. However, if you wanted to just tunnel 1 person, these perks also helped you do that quite effectively because Pain Res activated every single time you got a hook, allowing you a lot of free gen pressure without actually having to go and pressure the gens. So obviously this didn't really work out. Pain Res ended up getting nerfed, which led us into our next meta, the Gen Kick meta. Now, this meta was piss poor. This was the absolute worst meta we've ever had in Dead by Daylight's history, because it no longer revolved in chasing survivors at all and instead relied entirely on defending generators. This was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre on steroids nightmare meta, and the entire community could not wait to move away from it, and fortunately we eventually did, which led to our recent Pain Res Pop meta. Now, both of these perks are nerfed versions of their former selves, so you could kind of already see less and less powerful options within the game to use as the meta. Now, again, I actually think that this was a fairly healthy meta, and this time the thing that actually made it negative was that it didn't really work so well for mid to low tier killers while simultaneously being very effective on high tier killers, because medium and low tier killers can just not rely on getting consistent scourge hooks and pops. So you might ask, well, then why was it nerfed again? Well, it was nerfed again because, like I said, it worked really well on high tiers, and of course we can't have any kind of logical system there. Now, these 2 perks that are already a shell of their previous versions have been nerfed yet again in this 8.0 update. So killer players are already pretty used to this, right? It's basically the same story over and over again. However, this time I believe it's different because there's nothing left in the box. Killers are pretty much just left with bad or mediocre gen defense perks at this point. Keep in mind, Pain Res and Pop both require a hook state to activate. Pain Res is heavily RNG based and now can only activate once per survivor, whereas Pop still needs to be applied to a generator within 45 seconds of hooking a survivor. And remember, with the nerfed version of Pop, you only get 20% regression of the generator's current progression instead of flat regression, meaning if a gen is 50% completed when you kick it, then it's only going to lose 10% progress, which is an actual joke. You are better off running literally any other gen regression perk except Undone. Keep in mind this update came with a buff to Invocation Weaving Spiders, a potentially disgusting gen rush perk, and a new perk, Bardic Inspiration, which when combined with a meaty toolbox can also rush gens incredibly fast. Speaking of toolboxes, Saboing also got a buff across the board to make it way easier to deny killer hooks, which is yet another subtle nerf to perks like Pain Res and Pop. So if you can't see the writing on the wall already, let's discuss it. This update is massively de-incentivizing hook states. And what happens every time DBD gets pushed away from going for hook states? Well, the simple answer is nothing good. Killer playstyles are going to push even harder into tunneling. DS got nerfed again in this update, so enjoy that. I expect to see a big increase in proxy camping and securing hook stages. Slugging is definitely going to spike up as well. But what about the perks? What perks are the killers going to run now? Well, Pain Res will still be viable on higher tier killers that can guarantee hook states. However, the lower tiers won't run it nearly as often anymore. Pop will stick around for a short time because most players aren't privy to the exact way the math works on this perk, but once they feel the patheticness of it, then they'll drop it completely. I say give it a month. New metas don't usually form overnight, they shift with new playstyles emerging and through conditioning, right? Corrupt and Deadlock are still helpful and will be used, but are also very easy to play around. Grim Embrace was already really overrated, so this change just kills it completely. Ruin 3.0 is still terrible by itself, so as a sweaty killer main who doesn't really play high tier killers very often, I see two viable options for gen defense going forward. The first and weaker option is going with a full Hex Totem build with Hex Pentimento. There's a lot of RNG involved in this option, but I like that it at least gives me the option to focus chases and have more interesting fun matches. Now, the more obvious option, however, is a return to the gen kick meta. Now, at least killers won't be able to hold 3 gens forever anymore because of the new gen kick limit. A generator can only be regressed 8 times, I believe, but the guaranteed regression that comes from a gen kick build is just going to be way more consistent than the other options. The nerfed version of Eruption on average is going to do way more regression than Pop, and if applied to more than one generator, equal or more damage than Pain Resonance. Overcharge causing a single missed skill check will be better than Pop. The same is true of Oppression, which is just sad to think about. These perks also combo really well with other incredibly strong gen kick perks like Nowhere to Hide, Unforeseen, and even Trail of Torment. They also synergize well with already good information perks like Tinkerer and Discordance. So that is my prediction. Quasi Gen Kick Meta 2.0, higher tier killers won't rely on it as much, but they didn't really last time either. They will still get a lot of value out of Pain Res focused builds, which is the entire reason those perks were nerfed in the first place, right? That's the problem my currency system would help mitigate, but we're still not there yet. So yeah, basically there's going to be a pretty distinct separation of meta, with lower to medium tiers going for Gen Kick, and higher tiers using a hybrid of Gen Kick and Pain Res. Personally, I don't like Gen Kick metas. I don't really think that many people do. I much prefer chasing survivors than constantly playing around generators. I find it really boring on both sides, but it seems like the obvious outcome of trying to balance the game this way. So unfortunately, here we are yet again going in circles instead of accepting that a more creative solution is needed to solve these balance problems. But there's my prediction for year 8's killer meta. Do you agree or disagree? How many times will a pain res hook getting instantly saboed in front of your face get you to abandon the perk altogether? Let me know, and as always, thanks for watching and have a good one.